for all to see, the signs we've lost our way. When we jail our heroes and applaud our villains and turn our hearts away. Like a silent choir, too scared to sing the anthem of a braver day. The Ballad of Dr. Bruce Paix.
Here he is. Hello
Good
there,
o.
sir. Good-o. Episode 101, brother. We've passed the 100. Now we're counting down to 200. We did say we were going to start off with 26, and look at us go. Look at us go.
Did you say 200?
Well, let's see if
Could
we
we
make
sort
it
of-
that far.
Could we like aim at 103 or 107 or something?
Yeah. Now I'm not going to. Oh, there we are. I was just going to say, where's the comments that we usually have? G'day, Philip. Good to see you starting to come through. Big booties on there. Good on you. We've got some streaming happening, which is nice to see on the old Rumbles. I've just shared the X as well. So there we are. We just don't know how long we're going to be going for, Bruce, because you've just had a phone call from people who claim to be your old mates. So, you know, we just never know where this is going to go. Maybe they've rung up to say, Bruce, you're not actually allowed to talk about Desi. We know that you're, on top of these things, and we're not allowed to talk about the current new information about what's eventuated with Mr. Desi Freeman. So I don't know. Maybe your mates are calling you about that to say keep it low key, Bruce.
Yep. And for those who don't know, I just a moment ago I had a phone call just about to start, and this voice said, "We're from the AFP, blah blah," and I said, "Sounds like bullshit, but if it's not, call me back in 3 hours. I'm doing a live podcast." So let's see what happens.
Or maybe send him a message and send him a link to the podcast, Bruce, and he can follow along and maybe get educated. Don't know.
I think he's probably referring to the podcast without in the need of a link. It's probably in relation to that.
Probably is our podcast. Actually, I haven't got a call yet, so we'll see. We'll see how we go. But anyway, you're probably more on the radar than anybody else. But there we are. There we are. Anyway, let's see. Maybe it's about us discussing your previous run-in with the AFP. I think it's really easy to become not very trusting.
You know what it was, Mark? I've just worked out what it was. It probably was the AFP, and they're probably ringing to apologise. I feel like such an idiot now, don't I? We could have had him apologise live on the show.
Bruce, you just,
such a fool.
You blew it, Bruce. You blew it. Now listen. Like as a Christian man, and this is we're not. It might sound very flippant to me, talking about the Australian Federal Police in this manner, but I think we've got receipts from covering Bruce's story where they tried to stitch him up and send him to jail for a very long time. I think Bruce and I have, Bruce in particular, has reason to be tongue-in-cheek in regards to the Australian Federal Police and how they tried to give him a burger with a lot and have him locked up for a very long time. Which was then subsequently thrown out of court. So, look, I know it sounds flippant, silly, this whole pushback against so-called authority, but there is reason behind that for anybody that might be new or listening to the show.
Yep, they burnt whatever goodwill they had with a large number of decent community members. And a bit like I say with the Liberal Party, you're not getting that back ever.
No. We'll touch on that as well. So what do you reckon, mate? Should we get the show on the road before they start knocking down your door? Let's see if we can get the show done before they actually start knocking on the door.
Number 101.
Yeah, and Susie's got it right here. Police apologise. You're delusional, lol. Oh, what were you thinking? But anyway, there you go. Anyway, let's get the show on the road. I'm going to show you a clip, Bruce. I'm going to play it twice. It's only a minute, but I need to play it twice just so people can kind of grasp it and get their jaws off the ground. But I'm going to play you. This is from Canada, but not surprising. But I'm going to show you, and then I'm going to talk into it because I actually had to really try and investigate what was going on here, Bruce. I'll play the clip first, and then you can work out yourself what the go is. Hang on a second. Hang on a second. I'll just get the right one up. Not the
I'll
right
cue
one.
it
Not
up
there
for
yet.
you.
There we go.
There's a point of privilege on microphone 1, then we'll go to microphone 3. Go ahead, delegate.
Yes, hello. I was standing here with my gender equity card before you called on the previous speaker. That's my point of privilege that I would like to raise.
I will explain the speaking order, which is fixed, that I cannot amend, which is the pro-con rotation. You can move yourself up a line that you're standing in.
I am pro, and I was.
We went
pro, con,
we went pro-con, pro, and my plan was to go con. The speaker at con mic 3 also has a speaking card.
Yesterday, this card was used in an inappropriate manner. And while I understand in Ontario, we know this is equity, even if that, this was also used inappropriate in terms of gender. I want everyone to be mindful that these cards for individuals like myself who identify as a Black woman have no value outside of this space.
I want to play that again.
There's a point of privilege on microphone 1, then we'll go to microphone 3. Go ahead, delegate.
Yes, hello. I was standing here with my gender equity card before you called on the previous speaker. That's my point of privilege that I would like to raise.
I will explain the speaking order, which is fixed, that I cannot amend, which is the pro-con rotation. You can move yourself up a line that you're standing in.
I am pro, and I was.
We went.
You went pro, con.
We went pro-con, pro, and my plan was to go con. The speaker at con mic 3 also has a speaking card.
Yesterday, this card was used in an inappropriate manner. And while I understand in Ontario, we know this is equity, even if that, this was also used inappropriate in terms of gender. I want everyone to be mindful that these cards for individuals like myself who identify as a Black woman have no value outside of this space.
So there you go. I had to go and do a bit of searching, but this come from Colin Rugg. So he's a conservative guy, but he said far left Canadians start arguing over equity cards in 2026 NDP leadership convention. So he's saying good to see Canada arguing over the issues that really matter. Now, Bruce, I had to look into this, right? Because I thought it lost me there for a second. I thought, like, how is the world gone totally nuts? But it's actually the NDP is actually a far left socialist style party in Canada. At this event, they use special coloured equity cards like priority passes to decide who gets to speak.
I've got to stop you there, Mark. Just got to stop you there. I'm holding up my my card there. Look at this hateful comment. Gender equity card. Does that give you extra brownie points?
Oh wow, that is. I think we need to strike. I think we need to strike Love the Awakening. He's used the word brown in that comment as well, and I just don't know whether that is shocking. That is absolutely shocking. I don't know where we get this audience from. It's just absolutely unbelievable. The cards are handed out based on identity categories. For example, one type of gender equity favouring women or non-binary people, another for race or other marginalised groups. The idea is to give equity extra priority to people the party considers disadvantaged instead of just going in order by who they went. Yep, what's going on? Is it escalating?
Hello.
We're live. Look at this. I'm talking to the AFP guys.
Just hold on for a sec. I'm in the middle of a live podcast. I'll just tee this person off and get back to you. All right.
So the AFP again, Bruce. Gotta love the live stuff. But anyway, Bruce is taking a call there, guys. So we'll wait for him to come back and see what's going on. We'll see how much in trouble he is anyway. But anyway, I'll go through this. So for those of you that were watching just that little clip from Colin Rugg, the whole thing looks like a pretty petty argument over who gets to cut the line based on their identity points. The guy who posted the clip, so he's obviously, he's mocking it as a woke nonsense Canadians fighting over symbolic victimhood tokens while ignoring bigger real world problems. It's gone viral because it perfectly illustrates what critics call the oppression Olympics while competing to prove they're the most marginalised so they can get special treatment even at their own political event. The second woman even points out that these cards are worthless except this little activist bubble. So there you go, Bruce. I had you on mute there for a second, so you're back with us now.
Yeah, that was the AFP again, so maybe that's real. Anyway, I said call me back in a couple of hours, but I'm sort of laughing internally. Like, do I get an oppression card?
You want to check your white privilege? You want to check your white privilege? I want to just quickly.
Did you just assume I was white?
Yeah, that's it, man. I just want to come back to that because I'm just wondering what this person here did. Did she have to argue for? Did she have to somehow, state her white privilege before she actually took the speaker spot? I don't know what, or maybe I'm just assuming that this person's white. Again, I must be cutting so many lines here, but anyway, there you go. That is the world we live in, and to be honest, Bruce. This isn't just Canada. We here in Australia. I did a bit of research on it. In the circles like the Australian Socialists and even the Greens Party, they have a similar kind of thing within their branches and youth wings and so forth, where they do this sort of stuff. So if you think it's just Canada and this party, it's not. That's where it's kind of it's come over to us as well, probably for a long time. But anyway.
You know, I did a podcast last night on Cafe Lockdown, and one of the things that did come up is I said, I predict a pretty tough economic time ahead for us. I think we're going to see another depression level, reduction in living standards. And one of the things I said is that if there's any benefit that's going to come out of this, it's that all these luxury, weakness as a weapon people are suddenly going to find that weakness is not a weapon. It's only a weapon when you can guilt people into giving you stuff for it. And the Canadian philosopher Stefan Molyneux called these people languicides. They are parasites who suck resources out of you by using language. They call you names. You're an oppressor. You're a evil white man, colonialist, blah, blah. You know what? That only works when there is enough slack and fat in the system that people will pay you to go away. When everybody's really struggling, and I think we will be in the future, you're going to discover that people with the real power in society are not the victims of imaginary slights. The real people with power are the men who can weld and drive trucks, and the women who can cook and look after children and teach, etc., etc. Once all these luxury beliefs go away and reality smacks you in the face, as I'm dead sure is happening, and about bloody time, I can't wait for it. You can all learn to code, you card flipping victims. Come and join the real world and tell me what your real value is, and trying to guilt me into giving you stuff.
Point of order. Point of order. Oh, good, love you. Good on you. Anyway, moving on to the next little bit that I had to prime everybody up for the special guest. So the main performance. So we're still not there yet. We're still dealing with the comedy show beforehand. Let's have a quick listen to, while I prime up this next thing, let's have a quick listen to one of our mates during COVID period.
Baby. Oh. All right, stop. Vaccinate and listen. We are back with a brand new injection. Someone grabbed a hold of you tightly. Roll up your sleeves with a daily or nightly. Will this ever stop? Yo, we don't know. But stuck in lockdown really blows. Too many people think vax is a scandal. Take 2 shots and COVID's handle. Pfizer or AstraZeneca. What rhymes with AstraZeneca? Oh yeah, America. One of 100 places you can travel to. So just relax. Lay down your tinfoil hats and just get vaxxed. So we can go back to the old ways. Shaking hands, kissing strangers all day. Get vaxxed, baby. That's right. Get vaxxed, baby. What are you waiting for? It's there. Get vaxxed, baby. Gonna sit at home your whole life unvaccinated? Go get in the vaccination line today. Get vaxxed, baby.
Coggin to get vaxxed, baby, and I tell you what, it was a light in my life this morning.
So that was our mate Kyle, and Bruce, I did. We spoke about the turnaround from from Carl Stefanovic, right? We obviously had Carl on Channel 9 and everything else like that. And he's, to be fair, I think he's actually kicking some goals with his new show. Whatever people think, if they're, forgiveness is in each individual heart about how they feel about everything. But I think he's actually bringing some really quality conversations into the space, whether or not people say it's only for his own benefit. But Kyle's had his own little turnaround, Bruce, and let's have a quick listen to this quickly.
And I thought, if we're going to get locked down or vaccinate, there's no choice. Vaccinate. Are you ready? Yeah. There you go. Are you ready? Oh, that's nothing. What? Is it in there? Is that it? You done it? You're good. Bye. Get vaccinated.
A few moments later.
Radio host Carl Sandilands has revealed doctors have found a second aneurysm. The KISS FM host told listeners this morning the diagnosis was discovered in his chest during a checkup yesterday and surgery will be needed.
You don't like the vaccination? I don't like it either. I had a very close friend of ours who had the heart problem thing. Jackie's husband had the heart problem thing as well. I think we were told one thing and then we found out by luck too late that that can affect a lot of people. And I think that being told, and then it not being told to us, that's a shit show. Are you saying you were misled? Absolutely, I feel I was misled just like everyone else. Thank you very much. No, absolutely, I do feel like that. Can I just? Would I get the flu shot? Would the media like to report on that? Would I get a shot on something that we were told we had to? I don't know. I feel that. Vaccine, you know what? The government's misled everyone. Absolutely.
So there you go. That's Kyle doing the about face like Carl Stefanovic, and this was shared. This was shared from Aussie 17, who I follow on X and others. He's brilliant, ex-pharma industry person, and he's pretty much shared some of that. He's put that together and attributed the sources for those to others as well. He's very credible, Aussie 17, very, very good. And so it turns out close friends and Jackie's ex had heart problems as well. Who could have seen this coming? Who could have predicted this, Bruce? Hey, what do you reckon? Who could have predicted this?
We discussed that a little bit on Chloe last night, and I must say I took a harder line than the other panellists, Paul Oosterhouse and John Larter, and they both said, we've got some sympathy for him. He was misled. And I said, you might have been misled about the facts, but you weren't misled about the principles because they come from within. And the principle here is you own your own body and nobody else can tell you or coerce you or force you to do things with it that you don't want. That's the basis of rape and assault laws, and arguably forcible jabs constituted both of those things. So, yeah, sure. You didn't have the scientific background to assess this, and you believed what you were told, but your own set of basic principles should have made that irrelevant. It didn't matter if the jabs were safe and effective. Coercion was immoral, and that's what Nuremberg was about.
Yeah, 100%, mate. And again, And again, our good friend Elizabeth Hardis keeps driving this point home. She just shared a recent discussion with Mr. Malik over there. I think is he in the UK? I think, and a discussion with Mark Hobart as well. Who, you discussed this with Elizabeth on air when we had our discussion about informed consent. We were talking about vaccine as exemptions, and you do sympathise with. You understand the position you were in with people, but you also sympathise with Elizabeth's view on this, that there shouldn't actually need to be exemptions in place in the first place, and that's Elizabeth's core issue with all of it. There should never, ought to have never had to be exemptions for these sort of medicines or any medicines because of conscientious objection.
Yeah, the only exemption required was for the person receiving it to say, "No, thank you."
Exactly. That's right. 100%.
Doctors don't issue exemptions; they don't have the power.
Yep.
The patient's got the yes/no power. That's your first principles, Kyle.
Yep, 100%. All right, we'll move on. I've got just a quick little update in regards to the Liberal Party and this little share from.
Did you say the Liberal Party?
Yeah, this still exists at the moment. It's still a name on the. It's still there. It's hanging on by a
There's
thread.
still one. Is there?
Yeah, but Matthew Camiluzzi shared this. I mean, this is doing its rounds massively, and most people would have heard about Moira Deeming's issue there. The Liberal Party is an absolute disaster. They left, they don't have a clue. The latest shambles, a concerted effort to roll Moira Deeming, a woman who took a stand for common sense for a dubious character that has already collapsed. They don't deserve any votes. Now, before anybody pulls the racist card on me, this has got nothing to do with this person's heritage or anything else, because in this post, it had to do with him pulling out of the race. One of them was that he's obviously had a restaurant of his own. He was fined $25,000 after rat feces, grease, oil, and grime were found in the kitchen and storage. But that's not the only thing. The reason that he resigned, that he stepped down, is because he had pressure moves to disendorse Dinesh Guritsi after a personal reference for a child sex offender as well. So it's put him in a bit of disrepute there. So again, Bruce, the left faction of the Liberal Party has shot themselves in the foot again. So they've tried really hard to gazump someone strong conservative that's got good standing within the community, very, very strong, who you would think in the Menzies era would be someone that would be, accepted and embraced in the previous Liberal Party under Menzies. And they've tried to shaft her, and it's backfired immensely on them. So this just goes to show where the Liberal Party is overall nationally. And we can see this in my own state here, Bruce, where they've just recently got smashed. And only just, this is very interesting, Bruce, because they only just looks like they've pulled an extra seat above One Nation, and it could have seen One Nation as the opposition. And it's really interesting if it had have gone a little bit different way, and let's say you had 4 independents, because that's not really happened before, about who then becomes the leader of the opposition. So look, they've been absolutely smashed in our state. Lost seats to Labor and One Nation. So One Nation's, credit to them, picked up 4 lower house seats as it stands at the moment. Look, I think most of them have been called apart from Naranga, but it looks like that's in the bag as well, and a lot come very close. One of the disappointments for me is obviously there was another 40,000 informal votes again in this election, and that could have made a big difference for some of those other swing seats. So this is again people saying, "No, stuff it, I've had enough of the system," but they could have potentially made a bit of a difference, Bruce. So, and the other positive result in the Legislative Council, which is really good, looks to see 3 One Nation, so Carlos, Corey Bernardi, Carlos, and Rebecca in there, and only 1 Greens elected, so that makes it 2 Greens. But the other really good thing that I'm pleased about, Bruce, is that the Greens have not picked up any lower house seats, Bruce. So I am massively pleased about that. And sure, we've got to contend to them working with Labor in the upper house, but Labor doesn't have even though they've got all those seats there in the lower house, which is obviously where governments run, they don't have a majority in the Legislative Council, which hopefully can be a bit of a pushback on anything that they try and push through. So, Bruce, as far as I'm concerned, I think the Liberal Party is dead to a lot of Australians. I think this was obviously in Victoria, that happened with Moira Deeming, but I think the repercussions of the actions in Victoria, this undermining, this scheming, the far left faction within the Liberal Party, the moderates, it's absolutely showing that they're fighting tooth and nail to continue to destabilise the Liberal Party, which is ultimately maybe that's what they wanted. But there is a credible opposition building, so it really depends on where the centre-right conservative leaning kind of voters want to put their votes if they want to continue to see Labor. I mean, I put it this way, Bruce, what have we got to lose? We've got Labor and Liberal absolutely destroying our country, and they have over decades. That's why we see ourselves in the situation we are in regards to oil and all that, and renewables, energy infrastructure. It is because of Liberal and Labor. What have you got to lose by putting your hat in the ring and going, let's just give this party is the only other party that's got credible momentum to make a difference in this country. So that's up to the individual voters, up to individual people to see whether they just want to go with the status quo or they want to give One Nation a chance. And I'm not saying One Nation's perfect. I'm not here to be One Nation's mouthpiece or anything else like that. I'm just reading the room. I'm looking at what they're talking about. Can I remind people that they were one of the only parties, including Ralph Babette and Alex Antic, that actually instigated 3 separate COVID inquiries to try and get to the bottom of COVID through the last 3 to 4 years, right? So, I've interviewed Philip Altman and others. They were all involved in this inquiry. Now, One Nation instigated that, and they've pushed back on a lot of other things as well. So, yes, are they perfect? No. I'm not here to tell anybody that they're perfect and they're going to be the answer to everything. But look at the alternative and look at what we got. So anyway, that's my little blurb and intro.
Look, I agree with you. And the South Australian result was the first stage in eliminating the fake opposition. The Liberals were not an opposition. They pretty much mirrored Labor. There was nothing conservative about them. So the first task was to actually get rid of the Liberals, and the second task is to build a genuine conservative alternative. And we went a long way towards that. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think the next major test to that is going to be the Victorian election in about 6 or 8 months.
Yeah, Farrow, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, and then you got Farrow by-election as well. Yeah, the by-election as well. I think that's Albury. Is that New South Wales? I think, yeah. And then the main Victoria.
And I think that'll be interesting. But I think the next real test is the state of Victoria. And in distinction to South Australia, which did have a pretty squeaky clean Labor premier, we were a couple of elections past that in Victoria. And Victoria is also a traditional rusted-on Labor state. But we had 2 terms of Dan, which left a terrible taste in Victorians' mouths. Now we've had a term of Jacinda Allen, and she's also left a bad taste in people's mouths. And I think we've got a few months here for the annoyance to build when people find out that Australia has natural gas, Australia has oil. We're just not allowed to use it. It's locked up. And if we're all facing $3 diesel, and I think it'll be worse, in 6 months' time, you might well find that the Labor government here in Victoria gets an almighty thwack. And what the Liberals have just done is, if Moira Deeming chooses to take it, they've just handed One Nation their first lower house seat at that election. She was popular, she had a profile, she was already in, and people know that they've just shafted her. She was shafted by the party leadership. She took him to court, long process, and she won. And now the party's just given her a backhander for her trouble by not pre-selecting her. Everybody can see what happened.
It was a massive, attack from behind because they wanted to get revenge for what she did, and it backfired on them. It massively backfired on them. They played. So
I hope she does. I hope she runs in the same seat under the One Nation banner, and I'm pretty sure she'll win it. And so yet another step into eliminating the fake opposition, the Liberals, and replacing them with Orange members. And that's what happened in South Australia. I sat and looked at the results as the election went down, and pretty much what happened was the Liberals went down 18 or 20% and One Nation went up 18 or 20%. One Nation took all the Liberal votes as far as I could tell.
Some bled from Labor. And I think, look, I did a bit of commentary on it. I believe that Labor got another strong result because people, one, were really frustrated with the Liberal Party and they had no conviction. The other problem is, obviously, One Nation is still seen as a populist sort of, the media points them at a far-right party. So I feel people that weren't yet confident in the One Nation brand because they haven't proven themselves actually chucked their votes into a safe-ish, even though non-aligned political party that could continue running the state, even though not perfectly. So I think there's a lot of people that really just aren't necessarily bleeding heart Labor voters. I think they just wanted a safe place to park their vote for now, and I think that's probably what's happened there personally. But I'm happy to be proven wrong. I'm not I'm not a political expert, commentary expert, but that's kind of how how it looked to me. And you're right, Peter Malinauskas is a popular, one of the very, very popular premier, and stuck to his guns, and you know, brought in a tight ship. But this is the same with One Nation. You know, they were getting attacks from the media, they were getting attacks from the opposition parties, whether it be Liberal and Labor, but also copping friendly fire from so-called conservative right-leaning parties as well here in South Australia. And they bore all that brunt, didn't retaliate, they just stayed the course and ended up with 22% of the vote. So I think they need to continue to be disciplined, principled going forward, and that's what they need to do, just stay the course.
And whenever you've had a Labor government in power for 2, 3 or more elections, they run into the problems that you get with all big spending governments. They actually run out of other people's money, and that's very likely to happen in the Victorian election, particularly with the challenges that I foresee in the 6 months leading up to it. And yet you got their Farrer, which of course is federal, and I'd like to see Alex Andy poured over as well. Although I don't know if his seat is coming up. He's a senator, so he only gets
he's only just been put in that seat. Yeah, he's only just picked that up. Yep.
Okay, so he's safe from pre-selection the next time around. Is that right?
Yep.
I'd still like to see him jump. I really would.
Yeah, well, so would I, and a few others.
I'm just going to flick Gail's comment back there. So I'm going to give you a gazump strike there, Gail, because we're going to talk about that a bit.
Nice.
So you'll escape that on this occasion, Mark.
There you go. There you go. All right. Well, I'm done. So that was a good little, I guess, lead in to get everybody warmed up for the main feature. 101. Here we go. I just wonder, Bruce, you might want to reflect on any commentary you made last night on Cafe Lockdown, because they might be calling it in regards to any commentary you might have had there. Did you go a bit hard on the program last night there with Michael and Usti and all that? And did you go a bit hard where the AFP might be following you?
Look, funnily enough, I haven't gone back and listened to it, but I don't think it can be to do with that. And look, here's what I'm going to do. First of all, I'm going to establish if it's genuine. If it's genuine, then I'm going to work out whether I'm the accused or I'm helping with inquiries. And if I'm the accused, I'm not going to say anything. It's not my job to do their job for them. And you should never fall for the mistake of clearing things up with the police. The police do not contact you unless they intend. If you're the so-called offender, they only contact you if they think you've done something wrong.
Yep.
And you clearing things up can only hurt. They have to find evidence that you've done something wrong. And my conscience is clear. Despite being a criminal felon, I haven't done anything wrong, and I'm confident. So first thing I do is work out, okay, is it really them? If it is, am I being asked as a potential offender or as a potential witness? And if I'm a potential offender, I'm not going to tell them anything. And if I'm a potential witness, I'm not going to tell them anything either, because like I say, after decades of being a good and helpful citizen, I don't trust them anymore. I'm not going to help them. Sorry.
Yeah, that's a fair call. I mean, you've got good reason to be there. They wanted to put you away in jail for a very long time, which is not a nice place. And they already did that for a while as well. They already did that, and they put you in very harsh conditions. So, and I guess, Bruce, you'll be recording every interaction.
No, would that be
Bruce's Law 101.
Oh, good. All right, let's get into it. And isn't it funny? Weekly Rap 101. That's like, that's like those uni courses, Statistics 101 or.
That's it. Yep, that's it.
So does that mean after 2 years we're finally getting started with the basics, is what that says?
Yeah. Now we've had our 100 shows. We should be knowing what we're doing now. We're almost getting to the professional realm.
And by the way, Michael from Cafe Lockdown was very complimentary in the show last night. I want him to pass on his thoughts and the fact that he regards it as one of the more brightly shining shows that Cafe Lockdown hosts. So
nice. That was a nice little compliment. Thank you. Nice to hear. Nice to hear. Thank you. And always amazing to have the Cafe Lockdown crowd joining us on a Monday as well. So amazing.
And of course, we thank him because he 10x'd our viewership by giving us his platform. So thanks for that.
Mm-hmm.
Righto. So contents list this week. So we had a late breaking story, as they say, and I think you sent me that. Although to be honest, 2 or 3 people pinged me that all around about the same time. So alleged Porpunka police killer Desi Freeman was apparently shot dead by police today. So we're going to discuss the early what we knows about that.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to do an update on what I now call Gulf War III, as in, World War III, Gulf War III. And it is Gulf War III because as far as I can tell, it involves the US, Israel, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iraq, the UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, Muscat, Turkey, Cyprus, Diego Garcia. These are all places that have allegedly been struck already. So it's certainly getting on for a regional war, isn't it?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I think it's all just getting worse. And I'm going to do, okay, what happened in week 4 of the 4-day war? On to finance. Now, some of the finance stories are going to relate to the Gulf War, with the states helping out with the increased costs by giving us free transport. I'm going to discuss that. I got my annual insurance bill from Shannon's, and as has happened every year for about the last 5, it's been a double-digit rise despite there being no claims made. So I'm going to discuss that.
Yeah.
Update on the Isuzu $235 piece of plastic saga. And a reminder that governments are taxation and spending addicts, and the budget's going to be announced shortly. And you got to bet that the events in the Middle East are really going to torpedo that.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a small diversity is strength story where a brave AFL player has come out as gay, but he waited 20 years till after he was retired to do it. So I'm not sure how brave that was. And to be honest, I thought it'd be braver to say you're not gay these days, wouldn't it?
Well, I don't know. Everybody should feel free to share who they are as long as they don't compel others to accept anything.
And you sent me this one. The IOC, as if it was necessary, come out and said that men aren't allowed to compete in women's sports at the Olympics. Really?
Yes. Wow, that's a big turnaround.
I made that clear.
Wow. But what is a woman, Bruce? Can anybody tell Brendan Murphy? Maybe Brendan Murphy needs another course on, what is a woman?
I do hope he hasn't ported over into the IOC chairmanship in his retirement, because that'd be a bit awkward, wouldn't it?
Yeah, he's probably making money from vaccines or something somewhere along the lines. But anyway, I know that's John Skerritt, isn't it? Yeah.
And finally, a story about the use of the word premises. So this is the inner pedant in me. And again, reference the AFP calling. It's one of those standard lines by the police. If you hear them talking, they're always saying members of the public and premises were attended. And that's always seemed odd to me, because when they say premises, they're talking about one building, normally one shop. So I actually did a little dive into why do we say that, and there is a reason, and I'll enlighten you all if you're interested, still in what's that, hour and a half's time or whatever it comes to.
Yeah. And I'm going to say I trump you, Jace, because I'm white, middle-aged and straight and a Christian.
Christian, yep.
That's even.
I'm Aboriginal.
Me too.
I got the jail time to prove it.
Yeah.
Boom dish. Righto. Updates. So yeah, I think you flicked me this one as well. So 6 or 8 hours ago, we got the news that who is believed to be Desi Freeman was shot dead at a property in northeastern Victoria today by the police. And the early information is that there was a tip-off to police. So heavily armed police attended a property in northeast Victoria where there was some sort of confrontation, and in the process of that, Desi Freeman was shot dead. Now, at the start of all of this, which was 6 or 8 months ago, middle of last winter, I think.
Yeah.
I made some predictions, as I want to do, and my first prediction was that he would never be found. My second prediction was that he was probably already dead, and my third prediction is that if he was taken, or if he was found alive, he wouldn't be taken alive, so there'd never be a court case. His side of the story would never play out, and of course, it doesn't have to now. There might be a coronial, but there's nobody to try for the deaths. He can't give evidence. Nobody can cross-examine on his behalf, and that's a bit of a shame, really, because that will deprive us of the opportunity to find out what really happened there. And I've still got a few questions because, as we know, 10 police attended the premises in Porpunka 6 or 8 months ago, which seems like rather a lot, because they're attending on some pretty historical and not very, violence-oriented charges, if I recall. And we were told that he used a homemade gun to shoot dead 2 police and wound a third. And they implied that it was a homemade shotgun. And my understanding of homemade weapons is that most of them are single-shot weapons made out of pipe. They have a crude firing mechanism. So you'd probably be lucky to get 1 shot off a minute with one of those. You've got to unscrew the pipe after you've fired it, pull the shell out, put another one in, etc., etc. So we were also told that about 60 gunshots were heard by witnesses. So my questions there is, are we really to believe that he managed to shoot 3 police with a homemade weapon? And also, if the other 57 bullets were not fired by him, they were fired by Vicpol. So where did they all go? Is it possible that 1, 2, or 3 of the Victorian police who were shot were what we call own goals in the business?
Well, we'll never know, Bruce. Was there any, you think, like going to a scene like that where they were concerned about they would have had body cam footage, Bruce, but we know that kind of goes missing as well, don't we? From personal experience, Bruce, don't you? You know that goes missing, or it didn't record, or the battery went flat, or, but body cam image to verify the events of that day.
Yep. So now we know that that'll probably never reach the public. It certainly won't be examined in a courtroom. There'll be no defence. There'll be no cross-examining witnesses. And my guess is the body cam will never come to light. It's probably been lost already or gone flat. And same the forensic advice. It might be detailed in a coronial report, but I'm betting it won't go public. So I think there's going to be a lot of unanswered questions now.
Yep. Continue to be 100% what we expected. Yep, absolutely.
What we expected.
Dan Andrews will be happy, won't he?
Yeah, well, I'm guessing that court case will be off, won't it?
Funny about that.
All right, Gulf War 3 update. So we ended last week's show with Trump issuing his 5-day or else ultimatum. So he said basically, it wasn't a 5-day or else. It started off as a 2-day or else. So his initial official tweet said to Iran, if you don't fully open without threat the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours, we're going to bomb everything in your country. So that was just, that was still live when we had the show last week. And we discussed that, and I said, yeah, okay, I think somebody has to fold here, but I don't think the Iranians are going to, and I stick by that. I think the only way out of this ultimately is for the Americans to fold. And I think with a lot more escalation to go between now and then, because Trump is not the sort of admit I was wrong type of guy. So I think it's just escalate from here. So as we said last week, I said I think Trump needs to fold. Well, he sort of did, because that 48-hour deadline then turned into like a 5-day deadline. So he did fold early on. And that time he changed it to a 5-day one, which incidentally ported the deadline all the way out to the Friday night, which meant that there could be no stock market reaction to it if they did resume the bombing. And he backed out on the 5-day as well. So having given them a bit of an extension. And he said the extension was because that he was having productive talks with Iran, so he wanted to just give them more time to make a deal. He said they were desperate to make a deal, and that he just wanted to give them a bit of time to make a deal. So here's what the official White House tweet there. It said, over the last 2 days, so leading up to the first deadline, very good and productive conversations have occurred, and so he's instructed the Department of War to postpone the strikes for 5 days. Now, what actually happened was Iran said, well, you can do that if you want. And if you hit our power stations, we're going to destroy every power station in the Middle East. We're going to destroy every desal plant, which, by the way, all of the Gulf coastal monarchies are reliant on desal. Iran is not. Iran's got mountains, so they get water runoff. Dubai, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, they're all desperately reliant on desal, so it's a vulnerability for them. So Iran said, yeah, well, if you bomb us, we're just going to torch the whole thing. So that's when Trump said that he was having very productive talks, so he put in a 5-day extension. Now, Iran are turning out to be better trolls than Trump ever was, and that's a beautiful thing to see, because Iran's response to the news that, good and productive talks had happened and therefore they were getting an extension. Iran said it was fake news. Isn't that beautiful?
Boom tish. Touche, as they say. Was that touche?
So they really are trolling him beautifully. So just to go over the timeline, he gave them 48 hours to fold. They didn't. Then he gave them another 5 days. They didn't. And so then he gave them another 10 days. So what happened each time is he said, fold or else, and they said, piss off. Fold or else, pay off, fold or else. He said, great discussions. Yeah, I'll give you another extension. So the current extension actually goes out until, I think it's Monday next week. So the response to the fake news talks that Iran says never happened is that Trump's very pleased and he's given them another extension. So that's pretty good, I would have thought.
That's nice of him. That's
so
actually,
the current state, go on.
No, I'm going to play something for you in a minute if you haven't already got it queued up in your little intro for everyone.
I had nothing queued, so I'll just say a bit more, then I'll hand over to you. So the current state in terms of deadlines is that the US said that the Iranians have basically got until Monday week to fold. And that in the meantime, he's not going to attack their power plants and so forth. Now, in a sign of who's actually running the war, every time Trump comes out and says, I'm giving you 5 days, I'm giving you 10 days, within 24 hours, Israel bombs some piece of infrastructure within Iran.
Of course.
So Israel is not participating in any of these temporary pauses.
Yeah, funny, but who would have thought, Bruce? I mean, that's starting to become very clear and obvious. A lot of commentary in our alt media space in regards to that and the role of Bibi and the state of Israel, the political state of Israel in a lot of the stuff that's been going on. But anyway, let me play this for you because I think it ties into what you were saying. I'm just going to share screen and I'm going to play this little clip. Hopefully you get a little bit of a giggle out of it. I come across my desk today and I thought, I'll play this for you.
Help! We need backup! You can do it, baby!
China.
Okay, that's enough!
You forgot your gun, mate.
Don't need it. He's got bombs.
You got 10 seconds. Believe me, you don't want this. 5 seconds. Very serious situation. 3. I'm ready. 1 last chance. You know what? Forget it. Let's do this the smart way. We talk.
Okay, let's make a deal. That's a good point. I'll take it. Best negotiation I had today.
I think that tied it all up pretty nicely.
It's exactly what we just talked about, isn't it?
It just summed up everything you just said about that.
And that's in reference.
How good's AI getting, but
it's almost like BB in the coffee shop, isn't it?
Yeah, BB, good old BB in the coffee shop. Doing it.
And the island there was labelled Karg Island, and there's been a fair bit of message traffic in the last week about an invasion of Karg Island, and thousands of US Marines and paratroopers pre-positioned for that. And we discussed last week, that is Muscarova. That is deception, wartime deception. There is absolutely no military benefit in putting US Marines on Karg Island, even if you could get them there, and you can't because the entire Persian Gulf would be a shooting gallery. Let's say they took it. What are they going to do? They're going to cut off the flow of oil. Well, the Iranians are going to cut off the flow of oil. They're not going to put oil out onto the island for the Americans to have. And let's say the US blow it up and destroy it. Well, the Iranians then have no incentive to ever open the Straits of Hormuz because if they're not exporting oil, they don't need the Straits open. So it's a completely empty bluff. And the Iranians know it. They just know it.
Yeah, it's stupid rhetoric. It's all rhetoric. But again, many people now know that the US and Trump were dragged into this not of their own volition. There's a lot of power and a lot of control to bring this about. So, but anyway, more will unfold as we go.
As we discussed in the pre-show, the last 5 or 6 years have had 2 great awakenings. The first one was the corrupt nature of the medical pharmaceutical complex and the way they harmed people for profit. And the second one has been the string pulling by the state of Israel, which appears to have control over even major world powers like the US. And I think a lot of people, myself included, have made the distinction between Jews and Israel. And up until now, the Jews have surfed off 80 years of sympathy based on the Holocaust. Let's not go into the questions about did it happen, was it as bad as said, et cetera, et cetera. But we're not talking about Jews here. We're talking about Israel. It is Israel and America that are doing this. So Israel cannot surf. They cannot hide under the Holocaust umbrella because Israel didn't exist at the time of the Holocaust. This is not a Jewish thing. This is not anti-Semitism. This is people very reasonably saying, well, hang on, the country of Israel appears to have an indecent influence over other countries, and it's hurting us. It's hurting me. I'm paying over $3 a litre for diesel.
Yep.
I'm allowed to complain about it. I'm allowed to ask why, and it's not anti-Semitic because I'm not talking about Jews. I'm talking about a country.
And there's a lot of commentators going that line of thinking as well. But obviously, I won't let our government off, our Liberal and Labor government that have left our country in the position where we can be so vulnerable to world events like this. So we can't let them off the hook either. No way in the world let them off the hook.
Yeah, and yours and my whole shtick here is personal responsibility and personal preparation. We'll chunk that up to the national level.
Yep.
Albo can't just say, well, world events did this to me. Yeah, they did, mate. And you failed the first test because you didn't put in buffers to protect us against that. That was your job, mate.
Yep. That's because we have career politicians and not people that have lived worldly experience going into ministerial and bureaucratic positions. It's jobs for the boys and not As I said the other week, we have Nicola Spurrier as Chief Medical Officer. I showed that clip of you as Chief Medical Officer of the rallies. And I think you would have been a far better candidate for Chief Medical Officer of South Australia than someone like Nicola Spurrier. But, that's my case in point. We've got too many career bureaucrats and politicians and not enough worldly people in positions that actually need to critically think about the well-being of our nation and its people.
And you notice the people who wake up to all this, the people who have practical jobs, where getting it wrong has real physical consequences. Yep. So it's soldiers, it's farmers, it's truck drivers, it's welders. It's not HR consultants and political staffers. One of the things I thank the government for was paying for me to go overseas for more than a year to every garbage hole in the world that we sent troops to, and letting me see how bad life can really be. I used to come back from Afghanistan or Iraq, and you'd always, international flights always get you home at like 6 a.m. with about 36 time zones worth of brain fog. And I remember you'd be driving home, either someone's picked you up or you're in a cab or whatever, and it'd be like 6:30, 7 in the morning, the sun would be coming up, you'd be driving down the streets going home, and the streets would be clean. There'd be no bombed out buildings. There was no concrete blast walls. There was no checkpoints with men with guns. And like my mouth would just open and you just think, people just do not understand that this sort of peaceful illusion that we have in the West can go away at any time. But I'd seen how it could. So I thank the government for giving me that education. But you can guarantee that a political staffer in Canberra whose only job has ever been to go to uni, to do a poli-sci degree, to get a research job in some MP's office, then become the chief of staff, then run for parliament. None of them have done anything real in their whole lives, and they don't know how the real world looks and works.
Yeah, and this is the theme that comes back is, as people know, I'm part of Australians for Better Government, and that's what we talk about a lot, about ministers in positions of power that don't actually have any real world experience in regards to the portfolio they're managing. And I believe that people that have a portfolio and oversee a portfolio should at least have 10 years experience in that portfolio to manage it. But anyway, that's the by the by. And interesting to note that South Australia over the weekend had a massive terrorist a simulation event in Adelaide as well. So, who'd have thought? And people were rightly commenting, going, "Oh, what are they preparing for? It might not be now, but 6 months' time, what are they planning for, Bruce?" But isn't it sad that we live in a world where we have to do that now after Bondi, which was tragic, and that happened? Isn't it sad that we have to live in a world where we've got to pull up bollards and all this sort of stuff because of peaceful people that don't just use guns, they use motor vehicles to run over crowds and all that sort of stuff. So weapons are weapons no matter what they are.
And don't forget the old false flag possibility as well.
100%. 100%.
Righto. So where were we? So that was the Trump chickening out from 48 hours to 5 days to another 10 days. And a couple of days ago, the US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, said that the war will end within weeks, not months. Now, remember, this was a 4-day war at the start. And in fact, on about day 2, they said that they were ahead of schedule because they'd already killed their Ayatollah.
Yeah, 2 weeks to flatten the curve, Bruce.
You might remember their main war objective at the start was regime change. Well, a month later, we've still got an Ayatollah Khamenei in charge, haven't we? And you get mission creep, and I've talked about mission creep in other episodes, but yeah, wars always grow and you always end up trying to do things that you really shouldn't have tried at the start. And now, because they can't get regime change, the people aren't rising up. They've added all other things to their list. We want to take away their nuclear ambitions. What again? Didn't you do that at Fordo a few months ago? Weren't they destroyed then? Okay, well, we want to destroy their missile arsenal. What, by soaking up the missiles yourself? Because that seems to be what's happening.
Yeah, exactly.
Et cetera. All right, well, we want the Strait to be open. It was open before you did this. Seriously?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Actions have consequences, don't they?
Don't they? Now, Iran has come out and said, yep, if you want to talk, here are our conditions for ending the war. So, and remember, it is Iran that determines when this war ends, not the US. Unless you think the US is going to invade Iran, fight their way all the way through the capital and get the government to surrender, that war doesn't stop. And even if you occupy the capital and the government doesn't surrender and you get an insurgency, the war still doesn't stop. And I'm not saying for a moment that the US has any ability to fight their way across 1,000 kilometers of mountains and 90 million insurgents. Not possible. So the war ends when Iran says it ends. And their criteria for ending it, they've said. So here are the 5 things they want. So they want compensation. They want full reparations for the damage that's been caused. And we're talking billions, obviously. They want the lifting of all sanctions. And Iran has been under international sanctions for 40 years, since the fall of the Shah. They want full sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. Now, I would argue they've actually got that already.
Well, that's right. They already hold that card, don't they?
And again, for people who don't know history, you could say, oh, well, that's not fair because, you know, international waters extends halfway into the middle of the strait, and on the south side, you've got the UAE and et cetera, et cetera. Well, here's a bit of fun geography. Persia has been a country and entity for more than 5,000 years. Most of the Gulf monarchies, so the UAE, Bahrain, Qatar, etc., have been around for a few decades. And before they were around, they were Persian territories. So if you look at historical claims to things, it is actually not unreasonable to say that, yeah, Persia actually owns the whole Gulf, both shores. Arguments don't matter. They do have sovereignty over the Gulf at the moment. That's what the whole war's about.
Yep.
They want ironclad guarantees that this is never going to happen again. So they want some international enforceable mechanism to prevent the US and Israel just bombing them again in a year's time. And finally, they want the removal of all US military presence in the Persian Gulf. And again, I would argue that they pretty much got that already. Every significant military base in the Persian Gulf that's related to the US has been heavily damaged, and many of them are now unoccupied because they can be struck at will, as we saw overnight with them striking AWACS aircraft in Saudi Arabia. So I would argue
$340 million bloody, what is it, spy plane or something that was flying over there? Yeah.
And more important than that, so it's pretty much agreed that one of these E3 sentries has been destroyed. And that's a critical airborne radar early warning control aircraft. Now, the reason that's there, or one of the reasons, is because the Iranians have destroyed just about every long-range radar that was ground-based, the THAAD radars, for example. Now, I believe there are only 7 of those long-range radars in the world, and the Iranians have destroyed 6 of them. So they had to replace them with these Sentry platforms, the old Boeing 707-based platforms. They're a pretty old platform. The US had 16 of them before this started, and about half of them are unserviceable at any time because they're complex piece of kit. So they maybe had 8 available. I don't know how many are in the Middle East, but they've just lost one of them. They lose 2 or 3 more. And remember, these were backing up ground radars that have also been lost. The Iranians are very cleverly and very efficiently targeting the what's called ISR, information, surveillance, reconnaissance assets, which is what you need. You need to know where your enemy is to strike them. And the Iranians are taking the eyes out of the US and Israel with great efficiency. So there's Iran.
Isn't that interesting though? You know, like they all underestimated, even the world underestimated Iran's counter-offensive. You know, like most people, you know, they hear the news, they go, oh, Iran's just a backwater or whatever. They've, you know, outplayed everywhere they go.
They messed up big time, and the West has been very prone to regard the Arabs as a backward, unsophisticated people. And that may or may not be true, but the Persians are not Arabs. They're Aryans. They're actually more related to the Germanic peoples than the Arabian peoples. And they have a large, well-educated, intelligent, technical population, and they've been massively underestimated by the US.
Yep.
Yeah. So they're Iran's conditions, and I can't see the Israelis and the Americans going for these. And yet I can't see the Iranians backing down until they get them. So I think there's a lot more escalation to go in this, which is one reason why I think things have still got to get a lot worse from here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as I said, you have two very proud, chest-beating people. It's not going to end well, is it? Someone's got to lower their guard unless they're drawn into it like they always do, drawn in further.
Yep. Well, I can only see escalation. And escalation is particularly important for Israel because if the Americans accede to these demands, America's gone from the Gulf. And as I said last week, that is an existential threat to Israel. Israel only exists because of massive military and wealth transfers from the US. They can't do it on their own, particularly not now that they've made enemies with everybody around them for 1,000 kilometres.
Yep. And remember just to be clear, go.
No,
I was just going to say, Bruce, just to be clear for anybody that might be new that's joining in that, I mean, you and I have spoken on this podcast at nauseum about radical Islam, and you've talked about the Quran. So anybody that thinks that we're sympathetic to the Islamic regime by being critical of what's happening in this region now, I'd ask you to think again, because Bruce covers this from many perspectives. There's no lean towards radical Islam or towards Israel. There's none of that. We just look at the figures, look at the facts, look at what's going on there, and make that determination. It's about critical thinking, right? It's not about taking sides with anybody.
And it's about calling out bad behaviour, even in family.
That's right. Yep.
And you might remember 2 or more years ago when the attack from Gaza, they knocked the fences down and invaded Israel.
October 7,
murdered a number of, hundreds or thousands of Israelis. And at the time we discussed that, and I remember saying, I understand why Israel feels the need to strike back at this, but ultimately this will not profit them. And I wonder whether where we are today is at least partly due to their response to that.
Yep. Covered it quite a few times over our various episodes where you said that it was, you understand it, but their response will dictate what happens into the future. Absolutely right.
And speaking of things getting worse, this week they did get worse because the Houthis have entered the fray on the Iranian side. So the Houthis are an Islamic rebel group from Yemen. And in recent years, they have been in a war with Saudi Arabia, their next door neighbour, and they've also been shutting down shipping in the Red Sea. And they've been doing it with occasional drone and missile strikes. They don't have a navy. They're a bit like a minor version of Iran. All they can do is ping drones and missiles into the strait. And for a period of time, commercial shipping did not enter the Red Sea, which meant the Suez Canal was closed. Now, the Houthis have been quiet up until now, but guess what? In the last few days, they've entered the fray on the Iranian side. They're Iranian allies, and they've done it by striking Israel with their missiles. Now, this is important because the next thing that could happen is a repeat closure of the Red Sea through the Bab el-Mandeb, which I've circled there. And that's important because the Saudis, as we speak, are exporting a lot of oil through that red line, the overline Trans-Saudi pipeline. So this is oil they can't get through the Strait of Hormuz. They're actually transshipping it across country and putting it on tankers in the Red Sea. Now, if the Houthis close the Bab el-Mandeb, the south end of the Red Sea, that's going to make it much more difficult for the Saudis to keep exporting oil via this bypass. And this bypass doesn't have the capacity to replace their Hormuz side exports anyway. But the ship size that can use the Suez is smaller than the size of the tankers that can use the southern exit, the Bab el-Mandeb. So if the Houthis do close that southern choke point in the Red Sea, this is also going to have a massive effect on even these bypass oil exports because it can't all go via the Suez. Some of the ships are too big. And even if it could, it's a bloody long way from the Mediterranean around to Asia, which is where a lot of Persian Gulf oil goes. It's a huge diversion around Africa if they have to go north through the Strait. So, yeah, this isn't over, and I think it's just going to get worse until Trump and the Israelis give in. And as we said, I don't think that's going to happen for a while.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Now, here's an update on last week where Joe Nova pointed out that a lot of this is self-inflicted in Australia because we don't have to be dependent on Gulf oil because Australia already produces oil and natural gas, much of which we export. What we lack are refineries, and we used to have them as well, and we've shut down almost all of them. There's only 2 left.
Even in our state, in my state of South Australia, a refinery there.
Yep. There are existing coal, natural gas and oil reserves in Australia, which we could be using. Just our wise rulers have said, no, we're choosing not to use them. And now that's all coming home. And interestingly, you can also make pretty much anything out of coal that you can make out of oil because you can turn coal into oil and the break even somewhere around $100 a barrel, which is less than what it's costing now. So we're in a pickle here of our own making because successive governments have locked up our existing resources and shut down refineries. It didn't have to be like this.
Yeah.
And I would point out that oil isn't just an energy resource. Oil is a feedstock or a raw material source for a whole range of things. Petrol, plastics and fertilizers would be the obvious ones. So we're not only diddling ourselves out of energy here, pursuing the green dream, we're diddling ourselves out of raw materials to make things as well.
Yep.
Now, I think this is a permanent change in the world. I think the Persian Gulf is going to be restricted for a decade. That's my current expectation.
Yep.
So it's good to see that the political winds may be changing in Australia. And one of the first things that the fast rising One Nation have come out with is they've basically said renewables are out, coal and nuclear is in. So that's great. So they've pitched exactly that. Why don't we use the stuff that we've already got instead of shivering in the dark for moral reasons? So like I said, in 6 months' time, when the Victorian election comes around, if things are still bad then, and I can't see how they won't be, I can see One Nation really hurting the Labor government in Victoria on that basis. And then, of course, the federal level to follow.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and I believe it was a couple of years ago that Pauline Hanson did call out the government at the time in regards to their fuel reserves and all that.
And you might be aware that much of the world is agreeing with Pauline Hanson because many countries which have suddenly had their oil cut off are restarting their old coal and oil plants. So that's true in Asia, India, and it's also true in Europe. So they're restarting their existing old-style dirty coal plants, for example. Now, you won't be doing that in South Australia for some reason, Mark. Do you know what that reason is?
Well, because our Labor government sabotaged our fuels, our power energy security in our state because they've gone, and many would say they've just been given a mandate to pursue their net zero 27 dream. And I guess this is how many South Australians feel. Many South Australians backed Peter Malinauskas and Labor. So I'm pretty sure won't be very sympathetic when they start complaining about how everything's affecting them here in our state going forward for the next 4 years. Hey, Bruce?
They're all about to be hit with the clubat, and I expect that there'll be a rush back to realist parties, such as One Nation in this country. I don't think we'll any longer have the space for these luxury beliefs.
No.
I really don't.
No, the real world will come and bite them in the bum. And look, you know what, Bruce, I'm very naive. I only become politically motivated through COVID. Obviously, many people know my story, fighting back against what was going on. I just have utter contempt for these people that, you know, presume to have the moral high ground about how they sold our country out. And I know that the Lima Agreement isn't the whole story, but this was, you know, to prop up the third world countries and give China a big boost. The Labor Party went in bed into China, but then we had, this whole shaking hands of globalization and international groupthink. And I blame them for all of that, because they've not looked towards the future of Australian sovereignty and our future and the security, our security for our children and grandchildren. And I hold them in much contempt, to be honest.
Yep. Now, let me respond to a couple of comments here. So from Alana Lani, I support One Nation, but I don't support war. Defence, not attack. How many times have I said that? One Nation supports this war, and that is correct. And I'm disappointed to hear Pauline Hanson publicly supporting Israel in this. As we've said, you know, you can't have everything you want with a party. I wish we could.
Yeah, 100%. And this is one of the biggest criticisms of One Nation, is their sympathy towards the government of Israel, and no one disputes that. You know, Jews, like anybody else, is the same as, you know, Muslims and Christians and anybody around the world, should be protected and not lumped into everything. But at the end of the day, the government of Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu has we should be able to criticize them. And unfortunately, a lot of people are critical of One Nation because of the unwavering support there. And I know that a lot of my fellow Christians feel the same, and I don't hold that position personally.
Look, I'm criticising One Nation on this issue. Reference what we said beforehand. We will call out things when we think it's necessary.
100%. Even if it is our own family and our own backyard and our own allies, right? We've got to be able to be truthful and call us out, right? So, yep.
And that's one of the main things about mateship. If one of your mates is doing something wrong, it is your job to go up to him and say, mate, I love you, but you've got to hear this. That's part of it.
Yep. Absolutely.
Now, that's the second one I was going to answer there, which is that one. Oh, hang on. Where are we? The mothballs. Why did we blow up our power stations instead of mothballing them? Virtue signalling is why we did it. Aren't we being good? Vandalism.
Yep, ridiculous. It was a sabotage. It was a long road back. Is adopting this whole net zero. Wind, solar, battery is what they want, and that's going to power all our industry, Bruce.
Yep, they burned the boats.
Good luck building those submarines and frigates with just wind, battery, and solar.
That's right. Yeah, and there's been a bit of message traffic this week from the Green Zealots saying, well, isn't it lucky that we've already got, pick a number, 50, 60% renewable power for our grid? Isn't it lucky we went that way instead of sticking with our old coal plants? That's an argument that's been good. No, it's not. And I'll tell you why it's not. The reason it's not is that worldwide experience has shown us that you can't have more than about 60% renewable penetration into your electric grid, because if you do, you get grid level instability and eventually the whole thing cascades down. So South Australia's had their own go at that. Spain had a go at it recently. So we really can't have any higher percentage of renewables producing our electricity than we have now. So we have to have about 40% coming from non-renewables, but it's worse than that. We have to have 100% backup. because sometimes it's dark and there's no wind. So you have to 100% back up. You have to have two parallel systems. But the backup has to be what they call agile. So agile means you have to be able to switch it on and off fairly quickly as you need it. And coal plants are not agile. So our old, reliable, cheapest possible power was the coal plants, which they blew up. So we had to put in less efficient, more expensive diesel and gas backups.
Yep.
And guess what the price of diesel and gas has gone to? And guess what? We can't get it. So if instead of using these backups, if we were still creating our electricity from coal, we could just dig it up. We could just dig it up. So no, it's not lucky that our wise rulers chose to blow up our coal plants and go renewable, because that's forced us into using very expensive hydrocarbon-based backups. It's not going to save us. Oh, there's a cat walking across the computer there.
Hello, pussycat. This is not a horse neighing. Nay.
No, and I've fed him and I've fed the neighbours. I might have to kick Ranger out shortly, but let's see how we go.
Oh, Ranger, what are you doing walking across the keyboards?
Yeah, I'm surprised Nigger didn't come in actually, but anyway, there we are. That's our that's an answer to the aren't we lucky that we did the solar thing. Okay. And as a reminder, there's a straight line correlation between energy and the economy. The amount of electrical power that your country produces is direct correlation to how rich it is, what its GDP is, what its living standard is. There is no such thing as a low energy, high income country. It's a direct correlation. And that graph is telling you about electricity. And we're not strictly talking about electricity when we talk about the Middle East problem, except we are. Because even after decades of green zealotry, there is very little penetration of wind and solar into our actual GDP. Almost all of it is still related to coal and oil. And by the way, we can't change that on the fly. We can't build wind turbines when we don't have any trucks to mine the stuff, etc., etc. So not only is your standard of living directly related to how much electricity your country produces, but the amount of electricity your country produces is also directly related to, this slide says oil, but let's call it hydrocarbons. So oil, gas and coal, again, is a direct correlation to how rich and what your state of living is.
Yep.
So in summary, to the wind zealots, no, renewables are not going to save us here because they're not agile. We still have to have hydrocarbon backups, and we can't use cheap hydrocarbon backups, coal, because you blew them up. Even if you could, electricity is not practical as a transport fuel because it's too hard to store. It's dangerous and low energy density. And finally, electricity produced by a windmill cannot give you raw materials to make anything. You can't make fertilizer from the output of a wind turbine. You can't make bitumen. You can't make plastics. There are no raw materials in the electricity that comes out of wind and solar. There's just electrons. So for all those reasons, no, we need to be self-sufficient in hydrocarbons still. We can't replace it with green. Look around you. What has the last month shown you? Wait till you see what the next 6 months shows you.
Yes, it's only going to get worse. That's exactly right. And no, Alana, I did not see that, heard that speech. I did a bit of a search on it. I checked the transcript, but I didn't find a reference to the New World Order from Ursula's Australian press conference. I did find the press conference, and it'd be interesting to listen to what she's saying because she's a globalist through and through, that one.
And hopefully that's all going to become irrelevant because they're all luxury beliefs. When we're cold and hungry, we don't care what Europe says.
That's exactly right. Oh, come on, Bruce,
Now,
build back better.
Alani, I'm going to
Mhm.
talk a bit about biofuels here, but I'm not going to do a deep dive because my conclusion is going to be biofuels are not a good thing. So, and I'll come to that in a minute. So here's my summary. So 4 weeks into the 4-day war, where are we at? So the war is still getting worse. So we've got the closure of the Red Sea threatened. We've got the Gulf infrastructure being destroyed, which means even if there's a ceasefire tomorrow, we can't switch all this stuff back on. We can't switch the gas terminals back on, the oil exports. It's all been blown up. And it's possible that the US is going to put ground troops ashore in Iran. And if that happens, you can't undo that quickly. Unless they get defeated on the beaches, once you've got troops ashore, you're looking at a long-term war here because you can't just undo that. You can't stop. You can stop bombing, but you can't suddenly click your fingers and all your troops are gone. The Strait is still closed, and that means Iran is still winning because that is what this war turns on, whether the Strait is open or closed.
Yeah.
Now, despite that, Trump's still using the old home by Christmas line, which has been used in every war since the First World War, as far as I know. And fuel prices are still rising, and we're starting to see that flow over into other things that are related to it. So fertilizer, aluminium, petrochemicals, helium, etc. So things are worse this week than they were last week.
Yep.
So to summarize it all, I think we've got a historical global crisis in the making that'll involve energy and finance. I think it will end with the departure of the US from the Gulf, the end of the US dollar as the world reserve currency, and Israel may cease to exist as well. And in the meantime, I think our standard of living here in Australia is going to halve because of all these things.
Yep.
Welcome aboard, everybody. Welcome aboard, everybody.
Yeah. Yep. Hello. Hello. Yeah, it's funny. I'm actually going to go back and listen to that speech because it's very interesting, Bruce. You know, we've got this fracturing with US-Australia relations, and isn't it nice? It's funny seeing the Europeans now under the European Union, because lots of countries obviously under the Union now want to cozy up to Australia now that we're seeing a bit of fracturing between Australia-America relations. And so they're looking to go into massive trade deals with Australia and talking about, just very briefly looking at the transcript then from, you know, she's saying so, but it's very interesting. If you remember, do you remember the little clip from the, World Economic Forum about, you know, you will own nothing and you'll be happy scenario?
Yep.
She's got one reference there where she's got, as I've said, the world we live in is conflictual and it is competitive. Old alliances are put into question. That is a direct line from that World Economic Forum video. That line, she's quoting, old alliances are put into question, and that video come out years and years ago. This was, you know, this whole massive attack on, I guess, America as a superpower, and then the alliances between Australia and America. It's all, and now the Europeans are looking to cozy. Well, the European Union is looking to cozy, and I think that's a dangerous thing because I think they're as corrupt as the rest of them. Anyway, the European Union itself is massively corrupt.
Yep. And Western values will be tested to the limits.
Yes, that's right. That is exactly right, my friend. Oh,
you will own half as much and be happy.
Yeah, Roger. I just want to see these new world order lot own nothing and not be happy.
Mate, I'm already happy, Mark.
Yes, that's right. Why would we want to change it? We don't need you lot to try and make our life happier. Just get out of our life and we'd be mostly happy.
That would make me happy. Yep.
If they totally get out of our life and just let us live. Bloody government.
Okay, so let's, before we flick into finance, Ivan there's asked, if 20% of oil comes from the Strait, where's the other 80%? Okay, so a couple of points to make there is that the 20% figure is 20% of world oil consumption, which isn't the relevant figure the relevant figure is what percentage is exported. So if your country drills 80% of its own oil, then it's got 20% left to export, not 100%. So in fact, the figure for exportable oil is close to 30%. So a third of the available oil, the oil that countries can bid for, has been choked up in the Strait there, not a fifth. So that's part of it. And the other thing is that in economics, the price is set by what's called the marginal buyer. So the last person who buys something determines the price. So when you've got a shortage, people say, I will pay more. So you don't have to have a big shortage. You know, a 20% or 30% deficit doesn't mean the price goes up by a third. It could go up by a lot more, because there'll be some people who say, I'm just going to buy it whatever the price is and just bid it up. You know, we're looking at a supply restriction here. Okay, so that's that. So money and finance this week. So relatively modest moves given the state of the world. So we've got precious metals up 5 and 7%, Bitcoin flat, stock market down a little bit, and oil prices up a little bit. So the financial world is still blind to just how big this is. That's my view. I regard this as a very big deal, and I don't think the financial world has noticed yet. I really don't. Now, Australia's noticed. Here's the relevant fuel prices week on week in my local garage. So this week, petrol's gone up, what's that, 20 cents a litre? And diesel is up, what have we got to, not 20 cents a litre. So both things are up more than 10%. Well, petrol more than 10%. So, and remember, thank you, Trump, thank you, Albo, regarding this. So Australia thinks things are bad, even if the world isn't reacting as badly as this. And the reason that we are getting larger variations in our fuel prices is because of local supply restrictions. And that's what I was just talking about. Even if availability here drops off a bit, people might be prepared to pay a lot for it and bid the price up because they really need it. Think farmers, think truck drivers, etc., etc. So there you go. It's local effects as well as world prices. And one reason I said thank you, Albo, is that 80 cents of that $3, what is it, $3.20 for diesel, 80 cents of that is tax that goes to the government. So there's a 52 cents a litre excise, and then there's a 10% GST on the final price. So the government doesn't really mind if petrol prices go up because they just get more tax, more GST out of it. And because they're taxing the final price, they're taxing a tax. So whatever the tax was, add in your 52 cents, and then your final price, you tax that. So there's a tax on a tax here. Thanks, Albo. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for dragging more and more out of our hip pocket.
Thank you for your attention to this matter.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we saw this message during the week, which was, you know, the typical, you know, why are the fuel stations ripping us off? Why did prices go up already when, you know, we haven't had the shortage yet? Well, you people probably don't know, but my first ever job was being a driveway monkey at Shell Tranmere in Adelaide. So I used to go down to the Shell station at 6 in the morning and open it up, and then run the shop until 8 o'clock and then go to school. And then I would come back at 4 o'clock and run it until 6. And I was paid $1.99 an hour back in the day for doing that. And the price of fuel was about 26 cents a litre. But what I learnt from doing that is that there is almost zero profit on the driveway for a fuel retailer. In my day, we used to make about 0.1 cent on the driveway. And that basically paid my wage to pump it. That was it. Almost all of the profit was made in the shop, selling Coke and oil and chips, and or renting the mechanic's bay to the mechanic, because that was owned by the station and he had to lease it. So there was almost no profit made in selling fuel. And we would get a fuel delivery every 3, 4, 5 days. One of those big trucks would appear and fill the tanks up. So the turnover in your tanks is very rapid. And when you were selling the current fuel, you knew that in 3, 4, 5 days, you had to come up with a large cat. Cat's
Ranger.
Cat's making love to the back of the computer.
Okay, good luck with that. Good on you, Ranger.
Where was I? Just trying to shut the computer on me. So you only had a few days with your current sales to come up with the tens of thousands of dollars to buy the next tanker load. And we would be in that case at the moment. So these stations that put up their price within days weren't doing it because they wanted to rip you off. They were doing it because they knew that in 2, 3, 4 days, they were going to be getting charged $2.80 or $3 a litre by the wholesaler to deliver them the next tank. And that's why on Kagari, which I think is Fraser Island, that guy's got to get his fuel transported across to the island by truck. And I bet you the price of delivering the fuel to him would have exceeded $4 a litre. So if he's selling it for $4.25, he's not ripping you off. He has to do that, otherwise he makes a loss.
Yep.
And as I mentioned already, not only is Albo holding his hand out for 52 cents a litre in his excise tax, but then he's taxing on top of that on the final price to come up with the GST component. 10% of the final price is GST. So the fact that fuel costs have gone up, call it $1 a litre, Albo's fine with that. He's getting an extra 10 cents in GST out of that. He doesn't mind.
Good on you, Jace. Jace is always coming up with the clangers.
Yeah. What are you doing, Ranger?
Ranger impregnated your motherboard. Hello, Ranger. Look at you and your studio set up there.
Get out of there, Ranger.
Good on you.
I normally shut the door, but maybe I forgot to do that.
Well, a good mate, Michael Arbin from South Australia, had a comment about that, obviously, and you probably Mike Gazump, you might be talking to it because he's saying probably unpopular opinion. The three-month fuel excise is actually against the grain of proper thinking, because ultimately that should be done after the fuel shortage and all that, because at the moment it's only buying into the current shortage. It's going to make people want to fuel up more. They're not going to think about it, and you've talked about this in our last episode, right? So it's counterintuitive, really. You lower the price, it causes more people to fuel up.
Yeah, of course. And let's make the point here that we're not just getting the same amount of diesel but paying $1 a litre more for it. It's not just a matter of we can have as much as we want if we pay more for it. The reason we're paying more is because there isn't as much. This is a supply crisis. So in economics, the way you balance supply and demand is if the supply drops, the price goes up until the demand matches it. There's a clearing price. And the last thing we want to do at the moment is to fail to let that mechanism act. We don't have as much diesel. The price has to rise until the demand destruction matches our new lower supply. That's really important. And Michael Arbin's right. So if Albo comes along and says, we will give you a $1 a litre rebate, look, a bit like they do with the electricity, that's a bad thing. Now, it's not the same as stopping taxing us, because taxation is a extra cost on top of that. But I'll talk about tax in a minute. And in fact, the Emergency National Cabinet met today, and one of the things they discussed was a reduction in the fuel excise, the 52 cents a litre tax. And that had been suggested by opposition parties. And until today, it sounded like the government really wasn't interested in that. They pushed and pushed, although today they did say, yep, we'll drop it in half. Now, yes, that's a bad thing because that will reduce the price signal telling people to buy less diesel. That actually will be counterproductive. And in fact, I predict that very quickly the price will simply rise to meet that.
Current figures, it'll be absorbed very, very quickly. Yeah, exactly right. And how much impact do you think it would have been from when they first announced with this war, Bruce, where people did the whole toilet paper thing in COVID and went and got a lot of fuel? How much do you think that impacted all across the region in the nation? Do you think it had a smidgen of an impact or not, or negligible?
Yeah, look, I think there would have been a significant impact, and I based that on just what I saw. Now, because I'm a farmer, I've always got 2 or 3 jerry cans, so I don't feel the need to rush out and get 20 litres of diesel. But pretty much every service station I went to, there were no diesel jerry cans in the rack. You know, a service station will normally have 2 or 3 yellow containers and 2 or 3 red ones for people who run out of fuel. I haven't seen a yellow diesel container in any outlet for a couple of weeks. And even the petrol ones, you can get 10 litres and 5 litres. I haven't seen a 20 litre one. So I think people are filling fuel cans more often. And I was at one of the card operated ones the other night, and a farmer in a farm ute was filling a 44-gallon drum. Now, to all the critics, that's not hoarding. That's someone saying, I value this and I'm prepared to pay for it. And I see a threat to the supply down the future. And so I'm prepared to put my money on the line now. That's not hoarding. That's somebody making a reasonable economic decision. That's what that is. But anybody will be labelled a hoarder if they do that.
Of course. Yep, which is just common. It's survival instincts. What do you think is going to happen when, things really turn to pot? You ain't seen nothing yet because you watch all those apocalyptic zombie movies, mate. That's real world right there. That's exactly what's going to happen. It's dog eat dog. It's self preservation and survival, mate.
Mad Max, the juice must flow. Now, prior to today's emergency cabinet meeting, a bunch of our independent MPs came out with their plan for managing the current fuel shortage, because that's what it is. It's a fuel shortage is what we're dealing with. And so here are the points that these 5 independent MPs put forward to deal with the fuel shortage. So they said the Treasurer should control fuel prices. That was number 1. They should suspend the 52 cents a litre excise. That's number 2. They should restore our ability to refine and produce. That was number 3. And we should mandate a certain proportion of ethanol. That was number 4. What are you doing?
Good on you, Ranger. Just hanging out with your dad. Good on you.
Just chilling with my homies.
Back to the see that's the signal there. Back to the camera and the audience means that he's pissed off, Dad. He's like, "Come on, Dad, hello." Nope, he's off.
I just said that.
You flicked the tail. Good on you,
mate.
This is live television. Welcome to live television. This is
animals and children, I think, is what it is.
That's it. Yeah, good. Yep.
Yeah, and poor Alani. Yeah. They are already demonising people for filling cans. And again, Karen has no idea why you are doing that. Are you a tradesman and you need to put it in your dingo or your bobcat and you can't drive that down to the service station? They have no idea. So I would, anybody who presumed to make a comment on that, I would tell them to F right off, Karen.
Amen. Amen.
Just played the ginger card, says Phil.
Yeah, good on you, Phil. Good on you. Bloody Phil. But between Phil and Jace, I think it's always a bloody tee-off who comes out with the little one-liners.
Orange cat. So where were we? They're the 4 things that the 5 independents suggested. So why don't we actually just go through some of their suggestions? So suggestion 1, the Treasurer should control fuel prices, to stop those dirty profiteers in the service stations from charging you too much. So that's called price controls. And price controls is an economic thing that has been test run multiple times. And the problem with price controls is that price controls create shortages. So if a business can't make money doing their business, they don't do it. So if your service station manager has just paid $4 a litre for his big truck of diesel, he can't sell it to you for $3.20. He will make a loss. His business will go bust. So what he will do is he will close his station and not sell it.
Mm-hmm.
Businesses cannot and will not operate at a loss. The only person who knows what the price of the good is the person who's selling it to you. And the free market will set it out.
He really wants to be the star of the show, and not to let out Lily. I mean, and not to show people that I'm censoring because my conservative mindset. But yes, Lily's come across and said no kitty porn, Bruce.
About kitty porn, I like it.
Yes, the reference of you mentioning that Ginger was making out with your laptop.
Yeah, that's right. They sort of rub their head on it.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know what you're running with. Oh dear.
All right. So point one
is Christian friends reaching out to me going, "You want a bit of prayer time, Mark, or whatever?" But that's okay.
So price controls are a bad idea. It's been tried many times. All price controls do is create shortages. And that was true in the Soviet Union. The old adage was, the price of bread is affordable for all of the peasants. It's only 1 ruble. The problem is there isn't any bread. So the bread was affordable but unavailable. And that's what you get if you set prices by diktat rather than having the market do it. So point 1, no, we cannot have anybody fix the price, especially not someone in government. Okay. Right. What was the second suggestion? They wanted to suspend the 52-cent, 51.6 excise tax. Now, I regard all taxes as theft, and therefore, in practice, in theory, I'm happy that any tax be reduced. The government said today they'll cut it in half. The Liberal opposition offered that before the last election. But here's the problem. You can't reduce the taxation that the government gets unless you reduce the size of the government, because the government has to be paid for, and taxation is just the most visible way of paying it. So if all we do here is drop the 52 cents that the government gets out of the petrol excise, that doesn't change the government's expenses. They've still got to be paid for somehow. And a reminder, there's 3 basic ways you can pay for government. There's taxation, which I've crossed out there. So we'll drop off your 52 cents. So if we can't get the money that way, we can get it by borrowing it. And state governments do borrow, and federal governments, they print money, which is effectively borrowing. They issue a bond against it. And if you're a Fed, you can print money too. Now, the problem with the last 2, so if we're not allowed to visibly tax you up front, then we still got to get the money either by borrowing it, which you as a taxpayer are on the hook for, or by printing it, which you as a citizen are on the hook for, because that creates inflation. That's just stealing value out of your existing money. So free stuff isn't free. We've discussed that many times. Free stuff has to be paid for, and dropping the tax requirement means you pay for it some other way. South Australia, I don't know. South Australia said they're going to give free public transport.
They're talking about it. They were talking about it. Haven't decided on that yet. But yeah, there's noise.
Victoria today said that they would give free public transport for a month, and I think Tasmania came out and said for 3 months. Now, in the second half of the story, I've highlighted this bit, which says the government said the free fares were a temporary measure costing $71 million.
Mm.
Well, I don't get it. How come free stuff costs money?
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. They said it was free. It shouldn't
Free
cost
stuff
anybody
isn't
anything.
free, apparently.
Clearly not. They've just dropped it, haven't they?
And by the way, the reduction in the 52 cents a litre fuel excise, the government said that was going to cost $2.5 billion. So apparently that wasn't free either.
Mm.
So that'll just go.
I thought the Allen government was already in massive debt, and they're trying to do everything now. They're giving away free transport. Like aren't they already buckling at the knees with their debt? Maybe it's time for Allen to go over to China to meet with her, I guess her funders. Like Dan did, and didn't Albo go over as well and meet Gigi?
Dan could give some introductions, couldn't he?
He could. He definitely could. Well, we don't have to have media involved. Remember, and the media is not invited for sitting premier going over to China to have meetings. Interesting stuff that happens there in Victoria, isn't it?
Yeah. Anyway, I'm hoping people will not be seduced by this. Free stuff isn't free. And dropping the visible tax you pay on fuel just means that you will pay for it in some less visible way. It's a fact of nature. There is no such thing as free lunch.
Yeah.
And as we've discussed many times, our governments are just constantly expanding. They are taxation and spending addicts. And despite the fact that they're already skimming off more than half of your lifetime productivity, I think it's about 56%, it's still not enough for them. They still have to have more. And so we've got a budget coming up, and the Treasurer Chalmers is already saying that, okay, he needs to increase the tax on EVs because, those dirty EV drivers aren't paying any tax. And there'll be other taxes here. If they're not getting to, $2.5 billion in excise tax, they will be getting it somewhere else. And my tip is it'll be via inflation, because inflation is an invisible tax and most people don't even know it's a tax. Just a mysterious thing that happens.
Yeah. Yep. How much was your splice when you were a boy, Bruce? Gazumpy strike again. It's been a little while.
And the Treasurer, by the way, is still looking at doubling the capital gains tax on investment properties. That's still out there. So that's going to help people with the cost of living, isn't it? Their fuel, what's the average person paying extra in fuel? $50 a week, probably. We've just had an interest rate rise as well, and the government's looking at taxing you more as well. Remember, the most expensive thing you ever buy is government.
Yep.
Like I say, people are looking at a massive reduction in their standard of living. Anyway, we're stepping through the suggestions of these 5 independents. So the third thing they suggested is we need to restore refining and the use of our reserves. Now, that's great, but that's probably a decade-long process to do that. Longer if you've blown the asset up rather than just mothballed it, of course. And we're so far down the green dream here that many of these industrial projects, not only are they too expensive to run in terms of electricity, but you can't physically build them with electric trucks and electric excavators. So I think it'd be a long road back for that.
Yep.
But in theory, we could do it. And in fact, we shouldn't have ever stopped doing it. And as Senator Canavan said, is Australia has lots of reserves. We've got decades of oil. Ranger, I'm going to have to throw you out, mate.
Oh dear, a bit of comedy there, Bruce. Oh, Ranger's been thrown out. Oh, Ranger just wanted a cuddle from Dad, and now he's been launched out. That's all right. I'm pretty sure you'll make up for it. Working, yeah.
So
I'm pretty sure our audience don't mind, mate. I'm pretty sure our audience is used to us.
I'm just checking if the horses are escaping down the laneway, and they're not. But you know what? I've got a kangaroo on my drive.
Oh, well, there's dinner.
Tell you what, I don't have to worry about, price of food, do I?
Alana Lani wants to know what the symbolism of Kata sticks. He was missing the reference. I don't know. Kata always looks angry. Doesn't look at him with those sticks there. Oh, Kata. I love him.
He's got Lebanese heritage, so they might be Lebanese fighting sticks, perhaps.
They could be. And Alana Lani did ask, and I looked it up for you. As of March 2026, the Victoria's debt is $160 billion and roughly $24 million a day. So $1 million an hour on interest on their state debt at the moment. So there you go.
One day it'll be a real figure, won't it?
Mm-hmm. Funny about that.
On you, Philip. There you go. All right. I've made the point. Look, we in Australia have serious hydrocarbon fuel reserves, decades for oil, centuries for coal. And the only reason we're in the position we're in now is because successive governments have chosen to do this to us. Our wise rulers have said, it's there, but you're not allowed to use it. We'll go the green route and we'll send all that stuff overseas so the Chinese can burn it. That's basically what our wise rulers have said. And that's all about, in the next 6 months, that's going to come home to roost big time.
Sure,
and like I said, I'll talk about that shortly. I think this is a huge leverage point for One Nation. I think by the time we start getting more elections, the people will be a lot more open to alternatives. But the problem is, we've let all that infrastructure go. It would be a decade-long process to get it up and running again.
Yeah, we've got to get to more elections, Bruce, because of the way that the government's allowing people to come in that are favourable to voting for them. It's, it's an uphill battle to be able to get anybody else. Like you keep saying, it's got to get a ton times worse before people actually start realising what's happening. So
I'm a bit sorry that I said it has to get worse before it gets better, because I think we're in the get worse point.
Yeah, I think we're all preparing for that. And to be honest, mate, we've spent 100 episodes trying to let people know to put themselves in a better position to try and weather the storm. And this is what, this is a public service segment really for us. You spend this time doing this. There's a couple of hours once a week. It's really purely designed for you to give information to people to put themselves on the best foot for worse times. So credit to you. And if people listen, that's good. If they don't, but hopefully, people become more aware.
Yeah, and I hate to say it, my predictions appear to have been reasonably good for a while, haven't they?
Yep.
Hate it when that happens.
Yeah, in this instance, probably, yeah. So, but anyway, ethanol.
Right. Point 4 from that crowd there is ethanol mandates. Now, I get PTSD with the word mandate for anything. And ethanol mandates mean you will be required to add ethanol to fuel. Now, I don't know if you can add ethanol to diesel. I've only heard of it being added to petrol. And you probably know, if you go to your local service station, you can get E10, so 10% ethanol in your petrol. And that's usually a cent or two cheaper. Now, I never do that because it's a very marginal cost saving. And fuel with ethanol in it is not as good as fuel with no ethanol, particularly if you want to store it. So if you put a jerry can of E10 in the shed, or if you put E10 in your lawnmower and you don't use it for another 3 months, there's a significant chance that water will have developed in the fuel, and I can't remember the exact chemistry of it. So E10 is problematic. You might be okay if you just put it in and burn the tank over the next week, but really it's not the same as regular fuel. It's not being added because it's better or because people demand it. It's being done because there's some sort of regulatory incentive to do it. And let's face it, if it was better, people would just do it. So if you have to have a mandate, it says okay, we're forcing you to do something you wouldn't otherwise do. How does that ring with history?
Exactly. You know what? And I found it's really interesting that federal MP for my electorate in Mayo, Rebecca Sharkey, and you've had dealings with Rebecca Sharkey, is actually standing there, being a Climate 200. A Climate 200 candidate, fully on board with this whole narrative of net zero and climate BS, and now she's advocating, oh, you know, poor Australians, poor South Australians, you know, we need to, right? She's one of the reasons that we're in the state we are in by adopting this, you know, crazy climate scam agenda and being funded heavily by Climate 200 for her electoral campaign.
Yeah, it's hypocrisy, isn't it?
Mm.
So here's my real reason for not liking ethanol mandates, and it's not just the fuel storage thing, but it's an asinine idea because it means that you are competing with food production to produce it. So ethanol is alcohol. And the way you make alcohol is you ferment plant sugars, plant carbohydrates. Might be corn, might be grapes, might be grains, might be basically any form of plant sugar you can turn into alcohol. So in order to put alcohol into our fuels, we must be diverting it from food use. Either we could have eaten the plant itself, or we could have used the fertilizer and the diesel and the land to grow a food crop that you could eat rather than a fuel crop. So biodiesel and ethanol, both you are diverting food to fuel. Now, that might be a good idea. Your economy can judge that and the free market will sort that out. But a mandate forcing people to do it will not. And particularly at the moment, because what are our farmers complaining about? They're having trouble planting because they can't get diesel and they can't get fertilizer. So if you force them to divert some of their food production into ethanol production to put into fuel, that's just going to exacerbate what is likely to be significant rises in fuel prices anyway. So it might be a good idea to put it in the fuel. It is a bad idea to mandate it because the government doesn't know the economics of it. The market's got to sort that out.
Yep.
Now, it's not all bad, Mark, because there are certain pseudo foods that we grow. And I would actually rather turn, for example, canola oil. I'd rather you turn that into biodiesel. Not quite the same as ethanol, I know that. Rather than using it to make poisonous foods that make people sick. And remember, canola, also known as rapeseed oil, was originally used as an industrial lubricant. You know, it wasn't a food at all originally, but our chemical food manufacturers worked out how to modify it, how to torture it chemically in factories to make it into a pseudo food. But it originally was used as an industrial lubricant. So that bright golden stuff that they tell you is healthy started off originally as an industrial lubricant. And the only reason it looks like it does in the bottle is because it's been chemically tortured to make it appear like food. So I'm all for turning canola into biodiesel because I don't believe it's a food. You're not diverting that crop from food use. Yep.
Oh, here.
So there you go.
Good old,
that's a
good
little bit about
butter,
ethanol, biodiesel.
Bit of butter and lard and olive oil, maybe.
Yep. Olive oil is a fruit oil. It's not a seed oil. That's the difference.
Yep.
All right. Now we're still in the finance section here, and Shannon sent me their annual hit to the household motoring budget here because what they did, they sent me my new insurance premium. Now, this car I've had for about a year. I've had 0 claims in it, notwithstanding the $235 piece of plastic. I haven't claimed on that. But for the privilege of reinsuring my car this year, Shannon's want to reduce the insured value by 15%, and they want to put the premium up by 25%, despite there being no claims. And even if there were claims, doesn't matter. I haven't made a claim in so long. I have a lifetime no claim discount. So if you multiply those two things together, they're asking me to pay 29% more to insure the risk of this car than I paid last year.
Oh, wow.
And we talked about this every year. Every year it's around 20%. Your car insurance goes up about 20% a year. Now, this year I thought, nah, look, I'm just, last year I rang them, did a bit of a deal, and, they reduced it a bit. But this year it's like, nah, forget it. You cannot justify asking me to pay 30% more when I've made no claims.
Mm-hmm.
So I went on one of those Compare the Meerkat sites, and I looked at every other major insurer, and they were all $100 higher.
Mm.
So the best deal I could get for having less value insured and no claims, and probably no driving, come to think of it, what's going to happen in the next 6 months, the best I could do is pay nearly a third more.
Mm.
I imagine that's going to help with interest rates going up, fuel costs going up, food costs going up, taxation going up. How do people survive this? Why are they still voting Malinowskis in?
Yeah, why are they still voting Malinowskis and or Albanese? Absolutely. And, we've talked about this before, and you're unashamedly, you've worked hard, you've worked multiple jobs, you've had a good career, you've set up for the future. So you've put yourself into a position where, and good on you for being in the position you're in, right? So many people haven't, and they haven't had the foresight or probably the ability to earn the kind of money you have or whatever, for whatever reason. There's so many low and middle income earners that would be absolutely buckling under the pressure of what's happening here now. That's just one thing. We're hearing stories of people living in their cars, living in caravan parks, living in tents, selling their home, and this isn't, and a lot of those cases aren't people that necessarily haven't worked hard or tried to better themselves. It's a direct result of the way that the economy has been run and the government's running our nation and the situation they've been in, because not everybody's going to be in the same position to set themselves up for these sorts of things, right? And I feel for these people. I've heard stories of people having kids removed because they're out of their home and they're having to live in a car, and obviously the Department of Child Protection believes that a car isn't the best place for a child, so they remove them. It's just tragic what's happening out there, Bruce, right? It's tragic. Fucking tragic.
I think the biggest contributor to the cost of living pressures is the fact that you're spending too much for government. As we've discussed, the government skims 56% of your productive endeavour, your money, away from you constantly. More than half. And if you manage to have anything left over and you put it into an approved investment, the stock market, a bank account, high interest account, you buy bonds. In all of those, your returns are going to be less than what inflation is. Yeah. And they lie about inflation. So even if they didn't, you're going backwards. And then they tell you you've made a profit and they tax you on it. No wonder nobody can get ahead.
Yeah. Yep. It's absolutely bullshit. Yeah. And again, people are so mesmerized by the spin of saying, we're going to give you this, we're going to reduce your costs here, we're going to give you $175 for electricity, to reduce your bill, all these wonderful things, and just, promise you other people's money at the same time, just driving people into the ground. And yet people continue to vote for this socialist ideology. And it just astounds me that people can't, people just can't see where this is going, right? And unfortunately, the people that vote for these parties are the inner city elites, are the people that are kind of in a position, they're doing it well. The politicians and the bureaucrats are on massive salaries. I mean, try living on $50,000 a year in this country with, you know, one person working. Maybe they've, you know, like they're raising kids. They're a support worker, or, you know, someone that works, you know, whatever, like one of the you know, a cleaner or whatever, you know, 50, 60. I mean, you need $95,000 a year just to sort of, you know, as they reckon that's the medium. I mean, the average person doesn't own that. Right, and so how can they get ahead? How can they live? It's just absolutely astounding. But they don't, you know, care. They keep voting. You know, the people in the inner cities, you know, make the decision for everybody else around the country, right? And because they're doing well.
Yeah. And a couple of comments. Jace says basically we'll just get third party and, you know, quarantine the rest for claims. And Alana said, basically save what you would spend the insurance premium on. So both of those are examples of self-insuring. And we've discussed this in the past, and I self-insure everything I can. So I don't insure my house anymore. I manage the risk myself. And if worse came to worse and it burned down, then I'd sell some assets, sell some gold or whatever, and rebuild it. Yep. Now, it's a bit different with cars, because with cars, your risk is not just the loss of the car, it's the damage you do with your car. So it's unlikely but possible that you go through a train crossing, you survive the crash, you hit a train, you knock it off the tracks, and you do $5 million worth of damage to it. So that's an open-ended risk that I really don't know how big it is. So I do choose to insure it. So, but yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And you're in a position. Well, some people have to make that decision, either put food on the table or insure their car. Some people even put food on the table or insure their house. Right, everything, all that's going up. Right, yeah. And and unfortunately, Gail, because I'm aware of the system, I've been in the system. Unfortunately, they don't look at the Department of Child Protection. They don't look at these sorts of things. They're massively underfunded. They're buckling themselves. Their first instinct is, let's remove the child and then think about what happens later. After that, unfortunately, the child protection system is absolutely flawed. When you consider we're paying $500,000 to $600,000 per child in residential care, yet paying foster carers only about $12,000 to $20,000 to have 24 hours care for a child. The system's absolutely broken. So there's so much wrong with the system, mate.
Yep, everything is broken, I'm afraid.
Yep.
And maybe this will be the clean out that we needed, the get worse then get better point, hopefully.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yeah, we can only hope, Bruce. I hope enough of us last through it. Can't be all doom and gloom, Bruce. Can't be all doom and gloom. Sure, you got some. You know what we need to do, Bruce. We do need to. I've been thinking about that. We cover a lot of shit, don't we? But I do think we need to work on some, you know, feel good stuff. But I guess that's not going to make people take action, is it? Like, I mean, ultimately, this stuff is all designed to let people really think about what's going on and take action to self-preserve, look after themselves, and understand that government is not your friend.
Well, you might notice I've started introducing the cat videos, trying to lighten it up a bit.
Yeah, maybe I should unlock my door and let the kids start interrupting as well. But I don't think that'd be a good. I'd have the Department of Child Protection come in and take them off me straight away. But anyway, there you go. All
right. So I've said that my insurance premium's looking at a 30% rise despite my flawless claim record. And I wonder whether this is contributing to it, because you'd remember the Isuzu piece of plastic saga. So yes, I've taken off the trim piece from the side steps, which got broken by a stick flicking up and cracking it. And Isuzu wanted $235 to sell me a new one of those, piece of injection molded plastic, which I'm not going to pay. And in fact, I haven't yet, but I'm going to write to Isuzu and say that I'm a new Isuzu customer. I don't like the fact that you're ripping me off. And as an example, that's a single piece of injection molded plastic, which they want $235 for. Now, let's look at some real world examples. So last Christmas, I gave the kid next door this injection molded plastic V8 engine working model, which has lots and lots of parts and electrical bits. It's got a little engine that'll turn it over, electric motor in it. Now, that V8 engine cost me $90 delivered from Amazon.
Wow.
And
$90.
that injection molded V8 has all of those parts in it. So it's got dozens, if not 100 injection molded parts, and they're all small and fiddly and complex.
Mhm.
And I got that delivered for $90. And Isuzu wants $235 for the single, much less complex thing that I'll put a circle on. And it's not like the Isuzu part is a low production run part, because it's a standard item. You know, this was a Isuzu for the vehicle trim level I built. This is a standard part of it. This isn't something they only sold 3,000 of. Every single Isuzu in my trim level has got 4 of these bits of plastic on the side steps, and the side steps are part of the package. They're not optional extras. So yeah, you're ripping me off, Isuzu. And by the way, you know, I said this V8 thing cost me $90. Do you know it actually only cost me $45?
Right.
I don't know what happened, but a second one turned up about a week after the first one.
For the price of one. Gotta love those. Did you go to Home Shopping Channel or something? You know, but wait, there's more, Bruce. But wait for your sharp knives to arrive, buddy.
Good old Amazon. And again, if you just want to do a comparison here, if I wanted to spend about the same amount as I'm spending on that piece of plastic, in fact, if I spend $35 more, I can get a complete generator, a real generator that works with pistons and moving parts. I can get that for, in fact, it was $269 because you can get $10 off it. So I say again, what are you smoking, Isuzu? How can you justify $235 to replace a piece of plastic which arguably is so flimsy it's not fit for the purpose for which it was sold? You know, I'm driving a 4-wheel drive. If I can flick over a stick and the stick can jump up and break the plastic, arguably then it was a design flaw. It was too lightly built. All right. Now, final piece of financial insultery. The experts are now telling us that the current crisis in the Middle East could result in inflation going all the way up to 6.4% in the next few months. All the way up to 6.4%. Now, as you and I know, that would be a reduction, because the real inflation rate over my lifetime has been between 8 and 10%, depending on how you calculate it. Ice cream, gold, silver, whatever.
We've covered it over 100 shows, Bruce. Over 100 shows, we've covered this multiple times.
So the experts want to tell us that it could go as high as 6% when it's probably 8 to 10% already. And seriously, given that oil is the economy, I showed you this beforehand, how is it possible that the price of oil can go up by 30% without pushing inflation up by more than, 2 or 3% to reach 6? Who are these experts? How is it possible that we'll only have 6% inflation when we've just added, a third to a half to our diesel prices? And I don't think it's going to end there. Now, friend of the channel, Christopher Martinson, who I say is the only site that I pay a subscription to, he's that good. He's compared here the expected inflation rates due to previous energy shocks to what was actually measured. So in the 1973 oil embargo, they thought that would be a 3.6% inflationary effect. They got 12%. During the tanker wars in the late 70s, they thought they'd get 9%. They got nearly 15%. And during the Russian invasion of Ukraine, they thought there'd be a 2.5% blip in inflation, and they got a 9%. So he's currently predicting that the current events in the Middle East will give us an 18% inflation handle. That's in America, but I'd expect it to be similar, if not worse here.
Huge.
And that's using the official numbers. And as you and I know, you probably need to double the official numbers to get the real rate. So we're probably looking at a 30+% inflation rate. Let's see what prices are doing by Christmas.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. Well, that's all the war/finance stuff. Just a couple of stories to run home with. So in the diversity is strength segment, we had this story in your paper, the Adelaide Advertiser, and it's a feel-good story because it's not a diversity divides story. It's a diversity unites story. And what they tell us,
I don't subscribe, so I don't see it.
And, I only subscribe because I get a free subscription because I was a CFS member and they haven't yet worked out and cancelled it. Same. I don't pay for this trash. So former Brisbane Lions and North Adelaide AFL player Leah Riswick has come out as gay and been showered with love. #SoBrave. Now, I don't even see why that's a story at all because, as I said, I think you're more likely to get hate if you come out as straight, especially if you're white. So I'm not sure that was a particularly brave move. Anyway, I did a bit of homework. So here's Lee Riswick's career receipts. So he played one AFL match for the Brisbane Lions in 2005. And then he played 200 games in the SANFL, so the lower tier. So after that all finished, he actually waited 20 years before he came out as the first openly gay male AFL player. So in his one AFL game, he recorded 5 touches, and he then waited 20 years before he came out, #SoBrave. So was this really something that was worth celebrating in the media?
According to the Advertiser, obviously.
I don't know. And his single AFL game where he got 5 touches, which #pro tip is not many. A pretty good game is 20, 25. Excellent game might be 30. Nevertheless, in 2023, he was recognised for that one game and his 5 touches by being inducted into the Queensland AFL Hall of Fame. So I rather wonder whether he'd already come out at least into the awards determining part of the community at that point because I couldn't see the rest of his career really justifying that. Hey, it's a feel-good story. Good on you. #SoBrave.
Yeah, brave. Yeah, absolutely. Good on you, the Advertiser, for bringing the current and important news.
The current thing. And now that he's retired and probably looking for a new career, I wonder, given the other precedents that have been set, maybe he could become the first openly gay non-flying astronaut in Australia.
No, possibility.
It seems to me that's a relatively low bar as well.
Yeah. Well, exactly right. Oh dear. It just gets better and better all the time, doesn't it?
Now, speaking of low bars, you sent me this one. The IOC's apparently found it necessary to say that male athletes cannot compete in female sports.
How dare they?
Just dotting the I's and crossing the T's, I suppose.
Well, I guess. Maybe they didn't consult the what was the party, the NDP party or something like that over in Canada to get the cards out. Check your privilege,
Cat card.
That's it, the cat card.
All right. So final story. This is miscellaneous, but I might start a new segment for this called the pedant section because this is a bit of pedantry. So to finish, this story is about police activity where they shut down an illegal tobacco shop. Any idea why this story caught my eye?
No. Well, illegal tobacco traders face fines. Oh, interesting. Was it the illegal part?
I'm not going there, but it's interesting you pick up on that, because you will notice that it's not the tobacco that's illegal. It's selling it without the government getting a cut. Tax.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
They're happy if you buy a pack of fags as long as they get their blood money.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Now, the reason this story caught my eye is because of that sign. It says, "This premises is closed." Now, that's pretty clumsy English for a start. And I've always wondered, when they shut down a business, a shop, why do they use the plural for it? Why do they say premises instead of premise? Why do they use the word at all? And why do they use it in the plural sense? And they do. The cops are always saying these premises are closed. And it should have been these, surely not this. But why are they using a plural verb to describe, or a plural noun, sorry, to describe a singular object, building, shop, whatever? So I did a bit of digging into that as well. And there is an explanation. And it apparently goes back a long way, centuries. And the reason it's in plural is because the premises are not the building. The premises are actually all of the legal details that go at the start of the purchase contract. If you're operating on a premise is an agreed fact, an idea, something like that. So if you buy or sell a piece of real estate, the contract will start off with a whole lot of details at the start. The things that go at the start are the things that the contract is then built upon. So the things at the start of the contract, the root word, things placed at the top of the contract, are the premises. So I thought, okay, well, that's interesting. So I pulled out my contract of land just to see what that meant. So this is the house I bought. And indeed, if you look at the start of the contract, there are a whole lot of premises set out. So you've got the estate agent for the vendor, you've got the vendor, the person who's selling it, you've got the lawyer, conveyancer for the vendor, you've got the purchaser, the purchase lawyer, and also you've got things like the address and the property number, 100 of, all that sort of stuff. So at the start of a sale contract, there are multiple things set out, which are, these are the known facts which relate to the sale of this piece of real estate. So that is why a single building has become called premises, because it is the building that is described by all of these things in the sale contract, which are plural. Now, let me know, people watching, let me know if you think that would be a very popular segment that I should try and do every week, or just disappear without trace because you're not interested.
I think that would actually be a very interesting show, Bruce. What do you reckon? I think that'd get quite a bit of traction there, brother.
Yeah, maybe do a whole show just based on these weird premises, perhaps. Anyway, that's me. What's the timing there? We're 2 hours.
Oh, nearly cracking into 2.5 hours. We really dragged it on tonight, Bruce, but I think it flowed pretty well. We had an appearance from the Ginge cat wanting to make out with your laptop. We've had quite a bit of banter and a lot of comments. There's been a lot of comments and covered quite a bit of ground, brother. So yeah, no, I think we've had people sticking around. I figure even if one person still sticks around to the end and says, "Good on you guys, thanks for what you're bringing," I'm happy. What do you reckon?
And on top of that, I'm going to have to ring their AFP back shortly.
Yeah, you do. You do need to.
That message, when I answered it the second time, he said, "I've sent you an email just to verify who it is," and I've just pulled up my email. There is no email. What if it went into trash? That might be appropriate.
Probably went into trash because that's where you put AFP correspondence. Wouldn't you? your computer.
Is it in spam? Nope, I don't see it there either.
Maybe he's still following up. Maybe he's watching the show first, Bruce, to build his evidence. Then he's going to follow up from there, brother.
No worries.
Anyway, I'm pretty sure that we'll all get an update next week about your AFP interactions to see where this all leads, my dear friend. Stay safe.
Does wonder, doesn't one?
Anyway, God bless you, brother. Thanks for everything you bring, and thanks to the audience, and thanks to everybody for commenting, and thanks for keeping turning up every Monday to hear us share. And it's really nice to see that people put comments in to say they come here for their news. So good on you, Bruce. Full credit to you, my dear friend. Love your work. All right, have a great night, everybody.
Thank you, Ranger.
Good on you, Ranger. Always bringing the entertainment.